Is Auburn close to landing another stud?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We are dapping it up this Friday with Montgomery radio legend Darrell Dapprich, the GOAT himself. We're going to talk about the two different types of depth charts that we have later in the show. We've got some disagreements that we'll discuss. But first things first, there's something in the air, Darrell, the chatter, the smoke, and it was happening yesterday throughout the day. And then Wilt Fong drops the Fong bomb that he's predicting Alvin Henderson to flip from Penn State to Auburn, which Auburn media has been saying this for months, even before he committed to Penn State, that everybody kind of expected Alvin Henderson to be a part of Auburn's class. But obviously it seems like it is heating up here, Darrell.
I think the important thing is timeline. I think we always felt like it was a matter of what it was going to happen. It's now just a matter of when. And there's a couple of key indicators, in my opinion, Zach, that kind of got this ball rolling. First of all, Auburn started talking publicly about other running backs, Roma, Mills Knight, Morris. When you do that, you're sending a message, get on board. You know what I'm saying? We want you to go ahead and get in the ship. So get in the boat. Secondly, I've said this before, we've never wavered. You and I have done two different shows where we've talked about we fully expected Alvin Henderson to flip. And a lot of it was based upon we saw him on Auburn's campus more than we saw Aubie in the last month. He's just there all the time. And that's a good thing. I mean, you are where your heart is. That's where you want to be. That's where you want to spend time. That's where you hang out. I think that's a real obvious clue that you're hanging around. You either like the people that are the coaches and the other players and want to be around them, which is a great thing, or you just love the campus so much and it feels like home. That's where you want to be. It's where your heart says you want to hang out at. I think those two factors combined, we could read the writing on the wall. We heard the radio chatter, and then the Fong bomb happens, and it just kind of reiterates some things.
Yeah, Malik Autry, class of 2025 defensive lineman from Opelika. He's been very consistent with posting his bat signal, which some people are calling the fat signal, which is hilarious because it's a larger dude wearing a Batman costume. It's funny. And he'll leave it up for a few minutes and then he'll take it down. And so that's what happened yesterday. And everybody's like, okay, well, who is this? And there was a bunch of different message board threads of folks guessing who it was. Some folks were dreaming that it was Juju. I don't think it was Juju. And, my gut said it was Alvin. And then the Fong bomb drops where Steve Wilt-Fong predicts that he will flip. Now, there is a chance that those two things aren't connected. There is a chance. I don't think it's likely. I don't think it's likely at all. What is it, like Occam's razor? It's like the most likely outcome is like probably what it is or whatever. It kind of feels like that's exactly what this is. So let's assume that it is. And the coaching staff's got a good feeling on it. Cause he's not dropping, Wilt Fong's not going to drop a prediction unless like a head coach is telling him something. I don't know if it was Freeze. I don't know if it was, Penn State or somebody else that's pursuing Alvin, Miami. Who knows? Who knows? But he's not doing that unless somebody tells him that, and then it's okay to do it. So you got to think it's going to be somewhat imminent. Could it happen today? Could it happen Saturday? If I'm Auburn, I want it to happen as soon as possible, possibly even today.
What is the likelihood that somebody that's about to perhaps get a flip commitment is going to be the one that breaks that news? I think very small. So I think to answer your question, in my opinion, it's just an opinion, it came from the Penn State camp, I think.
That's interesting. That's interesting. To kind of ruin his moment, possibly.
Yeah. I'm being very careful how I tiptoe around what I think about James Franklin.
Well, but I think we all went to their head coach. It's like, I could kind of see him doing that. Yeah.
And maybe they're not intentionally trying to ruin a moment. Maybe they're just getting information out to recruiting experts that they trust and say, okay, this kid's going to flip.
That makes him look bad. It makes him.
Of course it does.
He's losing a 4-star kid that is a really good player and a really talented running back.
I'm just going to say this, full disclosure. You and I both heard from the Penn State camp today at different times that they feel like he's flipping. So, right. If they're saying that, are they getting that from Fong? Are they getting that from Auburn's media? Some of Auburn's, beat writers or Auburn's coach? I seriously doubt Auburn's coaches are telling, Will Fong and that, he's flipping.
It doesn't make it. That's not how Hugh Freeze plays it, typically.
Speculating, but I think there's could be one or two different scenarios, and we've kind of walked through all three of them, and the one makes the most sense.
Yeah. The other option is Alvin's camp, but I can't see that being the case. Could be.
Not when he's wanted this to be so structured and choreographed all along. And flips are supposed to be bigger than just announcements. In fact, I said the exact same thing on your program a month and a half ago. I said a flip is bigger than just saying I'm going to Penn State. When you flip from another school, it's a lot more dramatic.
Yeah,
a lot more of effect.
You're decommitting from one school and then you're committing to another. Yeah, sure.
And this kid had all along loved the process. We've said that. He is all on board on this recruit. And that would make sense that the flip is a bigger theatrical production. It's a bigger deal. Yeah. And he seems to like the bigger deal. So he's not going to want that to leak without the element of surprise and shock and the wow factor.
If this happens, which, it seems like all the dots are connecting, what a huge get for Auburn. Alvin is so talented. And you look at his numbers and what he's done at Elba. We'll talk more about this, of course, after he becomes part of the class. Because we've been talking about Alvin for years at this point. But my goodness, is he so talented. He's so good, Darrell. Every time he touches the ball, I don't care that he's playing against a lower level of high school competition. He is so stinking good. He's durable. He's everything you want on the field as a running back in one package.
I think all the familiarity and how long we've been talking about Alvin Henderson has taken away some of the actual remembering how great he is and how special. You know what I'm saying? When you start to talk and it becomes something that you become real familiar with, you forget just truly how special he is and what of a great back. At the start of this process, it was like, oh my gosh, Alvin Henderson, if Auburn could land him. But there's been so much talk and so much water under the bridge at that point and so much familiarity that it's lost its luster a little bit, that we've forgotten just how freaking good this dude is. And we need to remember that and go back to that.
It's a great point.
It's like when you're dating somebody, right? And you got to go back to remember what it was like when you first started dating after a long, many years of marriage.
Wow. A little dating advice from the Dapster.
You got to do it. Yeah, you got to keep it fresh.
You got to do it. No question about it. All right, you and I disagree on a few things that we both filled out depth charts recently. I want to dive into why we disagree on a few of those things. That's coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets on the internet. Download the free Game Time app. It's so easy to use from your phone. 2 or 3 taps, and then you've got a great selection of tickets for the event that you want to be at, Darrell.
Absolutely. Just a wide variety: sports, theater, concerts, comedy shows. And so I've used them a lot for MLB tickets and then a couple of concerts. And so easy. And again, I keep talking about this, but I want people to understand these lightning deals are incredible. When you pull up the seating chart, there'll be little lightning bolts. Click on that and you'll see something really special in the way of deals and promotions.
Yeah, you could say they're lightning bolts because the deals and the prices are shocking. They're so good.
I knew something like that was coming. I just was waiting to hear. Can you imagine? Yeah.
Can you imagine buying tickets anywhere else? I can't. I can't. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Thank you so much for Game Time, the partnering with Locked On Auburn. Darrell, you put out a depth chart at auburndaily.com. Be sure to go check it out. And there's not a whole lot of competition at most position groups going into fall camp, which is a little boring, but it is what it is. Most of the things we disagreed about were parts of the two deep on the offensive line, and we'll discuss that in a second. But let's go to the defensive side of the ball first. The way we labeled certain guys positionally is different, which I think is a lesson in and of itself. And Jason Jones has come on the show. He's going to be the guy that starts for in the middle there. And he's talked about how versatile everybody is. He's talked about how he can play nose and the three technique of defensive tackle. He's talked about how Bleedy can do multiple things. Isaiah Rakes can do multiple things. Keldrick can do multiple things if you need him to, which is part of, it comes out in this exercise. So you have starting at DN, Keldrick Falk, which I don't think anybody will argue with, Jason Jones at nose, Isaiah Rakes at defensive tackle. And then the second group at defensive end, you have Bleedy, Philip Bleedy starting at defensive end, Trill Carter at nose tackle, and Gage Keys as the backup defensive tackle. We differ a little bit. And if you want to see my depth chart, it's in the Athlon Sports one. They use my depth chart for that page. I've got Keldrick at end, Jason at nose. I have Philip Bleedy starting at defensive tackle. You have him at backup defensive end, which once again shows the versatility of what they can do. And then my backups were I have Amaris Williams at defensive end, Isaiah Rakes backing up Jason at nose, and then I have Gage Keys as the backup defensive tackle. So the biggest difference is where we put Rakes and where we put Philip Bleedy.
And I don't think you have Trill Carter in the two deep at all.
I don't. That is correct.
See, here's the thing about this.
And you don't have Amaris in the two deep.
I do not. Yeah, right. So here's the wonderful thing about this. Number one, 5 of the 6 positions along the defensive line we've talked about seem to be pretty versatile guys. The names can play a couple different positions. Bleedy and Rakes, I looked at their scouting reports. Sometimes they played the 3 technique. Sometimes they played nose. Bleedy even went outside. Some places had Bleedy as an edge. Okay, so that goes to show you that the versatility. Trill Carter was listed as a potential starter in a lot of those places at nose, coming from Texas. So only Gage Keys, I think, was pretty much locked into a particular position. That's a wonderful versatility and flexibility to have. And then, dude, the veteran experience, I could not stop typing SR along all these positions. And so I think that's a great thing. This roster's experienced. I want to say something real quick that you led with. It is boring that there's not very many position battles, right? I wonder, do you feel like that's a good thing or a bad thing because competition promotes higher level of achievement? Is it nice to go into a year and go, wow, there's so many positions. We just know. We know who's playing where.
I think this is an unintended consequence of the transfer portal era because you bring in guys for a specific need. And I just don't think you can pitch to these transfer guys a whole lot of competition or they're going to go somewhere else. I think this is a byproduct of that to some extent. And there's going to be some situations where you bring in a portal guy and he underperformed and he doesn't win the job. But I don't think Auburn's really in that situation right now. Don't you think this is a little bit of an unintended consequence? Like, I don't think Auburn's alone in this.
I think that's a very good point and a very underrated point. And the only time I've seen this differ is like when Auburn went out and got Senda and some other offensive linemen last year that they knew were not going to be brought in to contribute right away, but they brought them in to bolster a class for the future or a defensive back.
Know what your role is going to be coming in based off of what they're paying you, right? Like they're not paying Senda the same thing as what they paid
Percy
KLS
Lewis
a few weeks ago. Or Percy Lewis or, whatever. Like it's just, you kind of know. And I think we saw this. I don't think anybody would ever admit it, but I think we saw a little bit of this with Rodgers last year, former 5-star from Kentucky. Like, you needed him. You needed some defensive linemen. And so they went out and got him. Like, I don't think he was anything spectacular, but I almost feel like you're compelled to play him because you're more invested in him and you need him to play.
Yes.
And once again, I think it's an unintended consequence of the transfer portal and NIL.
And, you think of guys like Britton, you knew they were going to be plug and play. Marcus Harris, plug and play.
Sure.
DJ James, plug and play. I mean, you go in and you say, okay, now the only thing we're really competing for or talking about is getting into that depth chart. Is it number 2 or number 3? I like that. I like the
Or
stability.
where are you? Are you a defensive end or are you a defensive tackle or are you nose? Sure.
So that's exciting. Yeah, that part's exciting. But yeah, it does take away the suspense. But I don't know. I kind of like it. I like the stability. I really do. I like knowing what you're going to get when you go in.
Yeah. The other difference we had on the defensive side of the ball, I had to write mine like a month and a half ago. Mm-hmm. And so if I could rewrite it again today, it would be what you put. You've got Jaron Thompson starting at safety next to Sylvester Smith. I had Jaron Thompson starting at safety next to Caleb Wooden. And if I could do that again today, I would switch Wooden with Sylvester Smith.
Yeah, especially, I mean, you are the president of the Sylvester Smith fan club, and you love this kid. But let's be honest, fairness to you, he emerged through spring. So if you go into spring and have a depth chart, Wooden would have been in front of him. Whatever he did in the spring is when all the buzz started happening and where he – so, I mean, you can't go wrong with either. But I think he's emerged and separated himself and overtaken that because of the kind of spring he had and how his name is not leaving the lips of the coaches who are talking about him consistently.
Yeah. Another safety that's on there. You know how I feel about Terrence Love?
You love Terrence Love.
I love him.
You have him behind Thompson? You have him behind Jaron Thompson?
No, when I wrote this, I think I put him at star. Yeah, I put him behind Champ Anthony. I don't think I would do that anymore because I didn't know what to do with Laquan Robinson. Because like we heard so much about him, and like I wouldn't be shocked if we saw him play some other positions in fall camp. Like that wouldn't shock me.
That's why I struggled having him as the backup weak side safety, and I put Terrence Love. I put Orr. I did the cop out thing that they do.
I would have done. They didn't allow me to do that. Athlon's like I just need 1 and a 2. I know there's
you
context.
allowed me to, so thank you. I did.
Yeah, we've got more space at auburndaily.com, I guess, than the Athlon magazine, which is fine. That's it. I think that's all we differed. We switched sides of the field for Jay Crawford and Antonio Kite, but that's minor.
Let's talk about the offensive. Oh, you're talking about defense. Yeah, defense.
Yeah. So defense. We disagreed on some depth in the offensive line. So let's discuss that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. What a great problem to have when you look at the depth on the offensive line. Mm-hmm. I mean, the fact that we're about to have the conversation we're about to have is a great problem, and it's only going to get worse and more difficult as they continue to get offensive line talent coming in. So we agreed on the starters, obviously. Purse from left to right, Lewis, Wade, Connor Lew, Jeremiah Wright, Xavier Miller. I'd be surprised if we saw anything different there.
What jumped out at you to those 5? If you looked at those 5, what's the first thing that just jumps off the page to you?
Size and age.
Yes. Every time Auburn, go back in history when Auburn has had really successful seasons, they've had really seasoned veteran offensive linemen. And 4 of the 5 are seniors. And Connor Lew, doesn't matter to me that he's a sophomore. When he got injected in the offensive line last year, they played better. So I'm giddy. I'm excited about that you've got 4 of the 5 starters that are seniors.
Yeah, and then Connor Lew, like you don't care how old he is.
That's what I'm saying. He was a freshman and made the line better.
For sure.
Last year.
For sure. Okay, you did something a little different here. So your backup left tackle, you have Seth Wilfred, the JUCO transfer, and then you've got Tyler Johnson, the redshirt freshman, as the right tackle. And Tyler Johnson's a guy who we keep hearing good things about. If we did a ranking of like folks whose stock has risen since spring has ended, Tyler Johnson would be towards the top of that list. That'll probably be a show we do next week. We'll see. But I think Tyler Johnson's the backup left tackle and Seth Wilfred's the backup right tackle. You have that switched. Why is that?
I also have Ronan Chambers on the same level as Seth Wilfred. I have Orr there. And I feel like it's because left tackle is a little bit more crucial than right tackle. And I feel like Chambers and Wilfred both have played more, one's JUCO, one's group of 5, more football than Johnson. Johnson's got all the ability in the world, got all the potential, but he hasn't played, I think, as many snaps at a football level, at the college level, than those 2 guys. The only reason why I switched it because of the critical nature of left tackle.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Wilfred played at the JUCO level, 1 year, I guess, and then Ronan's played a good bit of football. But to me, like, I don't know if those guys physically are SEC left tackles. I think physically they can be SEC right tackles. And I just think at some point there's a difference in overall ability and upside. And I just think if Percy Lewis, God forbid, but if something happened to Percy Lewis, one, there's a whole lot of other problems that open up if something happens to Percy Lewis. But if he were to go down or be unable to play for a series, I think Tyler Johnson will be the one who goes in.
Point taken. I think Auburn went and got Chambers underneath that, maybe that emergency scenario that they would never have to do. And again,
that's still, and like, I got a lot of slack when,
could somebody move from guard? We've seen that before. Couldn't Muskrat or Dylan Wade
could.
I mean, I would think you'd see that happen maybe before. I think there's backup guards that are more viable. You could slide Muskrat into the backup guard position and put Wade at tackle, and that would seem more fluid than, either way.
Yeah, because I mean, he did it. He was there all last season. So, that's probably what they would do. But you can't draw a depth chart that way, obviously.
Nope,
so
you cannot.
And then the other thing we differed on, and this is so minor, but at backup center, we obviously have Connor Lew as a starter. You've got Tate Johnson behind him, who did start at center for the Tigers. I've got Braden Joyner as the backup center. So minor difference, but worth noting.
Yeah, I just hear a lot of Tate Johnson's, his name coming out of Hugh Freeze's lips too. And Hugh Freeze has gone on the record to say, that he would have been the third center last year when Avery Jones and then Lew. I think at some point they both did get hurt. I can't remember, but we thought we thought a third center might have to play, and it was supposed to be Tate Johnson. And in fact, he's played there before. So, it's minor. It's really minor. It's amazing to me.
And hopefully we never actually know.
Hopefully,
ideally, right?
We never have to know. And again, it's going to be fun to kind of bookmark this and see when it's all said and done in September when they line up against Alabama A&M. But I don't know. I think it's kind of unique that you go into a season and it doesn't take long to do this exercise.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. So you did the OR thing again with running back. I wasn't allowed to in the Athlon magazine.
Yeah.
So I have Jarquez and Damari as the two deep. If you weren't allowed to put an or, because you've got Jarquez and you have Cobb or Damari, if you weren't allowed to do an or, and I said, hey, you can only give me two running back names, who would be your second name?
Damari.
To start the year?
It's what I predict, not what I would prefer. And please don't take that as a knock against Damari Austin. It's just Damari Austin played a lot of football for Auburn last year, a lot more snaps. When Hunter was suspended, he was the go-to back. So to me, that tells me that's where Auburn would go. You just know how high I am on Cobb and where his ceiling is, that I don't want to see him second year in a row get minimal snaps. And I don't think that'll happen. I think they're going to utilize him. And I love Damari Austin. I think he's a great back. He's crucial to the team. It's not a knock against him. It's just a praise of what I think Cobb's abilities are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's an interesting conversation because also we're kind of predicting what it is right now, not what it will be like in November. And I wouldn't be shocked. I just think Cobb's going to pass him at some point. That's just a gut feeling. Has nothing against Damari. I just think Cobb is a special player that the NFL is actually going to want in a running back in the first 2 days of the draft, which you don't see a whole lot of those. I think the NFL will want Damari too, but I don't know if he's going to be a top 3 round draft. I just think Cobb has that upside.
I'll tell you this.
So how do you manage that? I don't know.
If we were in the scenario we are right now where Auburn needed to get 2 or 3 backs in a particular class, and we turned back the clock and we were looking at Cobb and Chroma and Alvin Henderson, we would be just as excited about getting Jeremiah Cobb and coveting him as any back that's in this class that Auburn's pursuing right now.
You're saying Cobb's better than this class of backs?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying equal to. So you know how excited we are about Alvin or Chroma coming into this because we need running backs?
Sure.
If Cobb was in this class and he would be mentioned in the same breath as those two dudes as far as excitement and elitism and getting him as a running back. Auburn would be very, very much coveting that.
And I would imagine he'd be rated higher.
Yeah.
Right?
Close. I mean, I think he was not a 5-star. He was a 4-star, and that's what Alvin and Chroma are, correct?
Yeah, I'm looking at On3.
Was he 91 maybe overall rating?
Man, I don't know.
I think it was 91 or 92, and that's close to. It's in the same, real close to the other two that I mentioned. But my point is, we would be so excited to have a back of his caliber in our stable of running backs if we were pursuing a running back like we are this year and Cobb was on the board.
Cobb was a 93.53. What is Alvin?
That's awesome. This is fun to compare it to.
And Alvin, they moved the number. Why did it? 92.17. So Cobb would be ranked a little bit higher than him. For what that's worth.
Correct. So yes.
For what that's worth, if you care about that. So
I do. Would be pumped.
All right, there we go. Darrell, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Well, on my socials, you can follow me on X, Dap6410, and Zach got me on Instagram, man. Darrell Dap. Find me on Instagram, along with my flip phone that I got rid of and got a smartphone. Just joking.
So proud of you.
You can get me on a couple of socials, and then with you on Wednesdays and Fridays, and be sure to check out that Auburn Daily article on the 2D.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you when we see you, hopefully tomorrow with a little extra content. We'll see. But that's been right here on Locked On Auburn.